So y'all want a story time, huh? Okay, this one is different, I won't lie. But here's how we met.
I was on a trip, came home, flew into Toronto, went to a little restaurant for breakfast.
I worked there.
And she was my waitress.
Yeah. So he was telling me a little bit about his trip and showed me some pictures. And really, he couldn't stop talking. And I was like, sir, I gotta do my job. But no, we actually had a really good conversation. And there was just that kind of spark. And I was like, wow. Lo and behold, he stays until I finish closing. And he's like, well, I guess I gotta go, girl. I was like, me too. And meanwhile, it's just pouring cats and dogs outside.
She needed to catch a bus.
Yeah.
And I was driving home right past where she lived. So I gave her a ride.
Yeah, and we talked, and I gave him my number. And, yeah.
Texting at first. And then we started talking on the phone.
Yeah.
And the phone conversations turned into like 3 hours long. And
basically.
Here we are.
Yeah. Got a ring on my finger. So.
Yes, I know.
And honestly, it's been great. So, but stay tuned for part 2. As we'll tell you what our first date was like.
Oh, no, don't tell them about that. That was terrible.
So y'all really want to hear about our first date, huh?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It didn't go well.
It was bad. It was bad. So after a couple weeks of chatting on the phone, we were like, okay, let's actually go on a date. You know, we hadn't been on a date. So...
yeah, it was dinner and a movie type thing. I got a hotel room, and because I live a distance away.
He drove 2 hours just to see me.
And, yeah, so we met.
We didn't even get past dinner. Okay, we got a little bit past dinner. So I had ordered a shrimp Alfredo pasta.
And I got a hamburger and fries.
And I'm just going at it because I was so hungry. I had a long day that day, and I was like, finally, food.
I had about 3 bites of my hamburger, and I thought, something just doesn't taste right here. So I stopped eating the hamburger. Mm-hmm. And then
we went back to the hotel room so he could get refreshed up a little bit before we wanted to go to the movie. And we're making out a little bit because we had a little time to spare.
Yeah, we did make out.
All of a sudden he comes up and he's like, ooh, and he's like throwing up in his mouth. And I'm thinking to myself, is it me? Like, am I the problem? And he runs to the bathroom and he's throwing up, and here I am. I'm like, shit, do I need a breath mint or something? Like, I'm trying to smell my breath. Like, am I the problem? Like,
no, it was that hamburger. Yeah, so it was a rough night. It was a rough night. But you know what? She stuck with me the whole night.
well, I seen those murder mystery shows where people show up dead in a hotel. I'm not trying to go to jail because this guy died in a hotel. So I ended up staying with him, and I made sure he was okay. And then the next day, he was too sick to drive home, and at the time I didn't have my car or license. So he called his daughter, and she had to come pick him up. Guys, this is the most asked question I've ever received in my life, yo. So let me just break it down and answer it. I had told my parents separately because I wanted that one-on-one conversation with them to understand where their minds are at about it. And it's crazy. I wish that I had my camera there because it was completely night and day, and you guys would have loved to hear that conversation. Maybe in another video I'll share the conversations. But No, like my mom was not for it at first. She did not agree with it. She thought I should be with somebody my age, and which is understandable. But once my parents got to meet him, they realized that he's so wonderful, he's amazing, and he treats me so well. And so they just realized that I was so happy with this guy. And my happiness meant so much more than everything else, that they accepted it, they support it, they love him, and he's one of us now. Like they've brought him into the family, they treat him just like family, and I'm so grateful for that, because I know that a lot of people out there would risk losing relationships with their loved ones for something like this, which is kind of silly, but I'm so glad that my parents support it. Hey Mom, recreate your reaction when you first found out about M.
I thought it was a phase. I thought you'd get over it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Christ.
Is your mom upset with the age gap? My mom's right here. She just doesn't want to be recorded. But let me ask her. Mom, are you upset with my age gap?
When this relationship first started, yes, I didn't want to hear anything about it. I was not impressed with it. But as time went on and I saw the love in your eyes towards him and how much you matured and cared for him, I thought, well, you're happy. That's all that matters in my eyes. And I have grown to, like him.
Almost name dropped right there.
Age gap at this point is, yes, a big number, but the chemistry that you guys have, the communication you guys have, it's what everybody wants.
Aww, you're such a sweetie. Aww, you make me blush.
While I curl my hair for tonight, I'm going to tell you guys about my first ever Hinge date that I just recently went on. I am using my T3 1 1/4 curling iron linked in my shop, my most amazing curling iron ever. I guess to provide some context or background, I would love to meet somebody out in the wild, in my natural environment. I am a personality person, need to see if you can keep up, banter, need somebody to be very funny. So I kind of avoided the apps for a while, and I hate texting, so I didn't see a world where I would actually find somebody on Hinge. But obviously everyone's on Hinge, so with some of my friends' help and encouragement, I decided to make a profile. So now we're here on Hinge, scrolling away, meet an individual on this app, and we make a plan to go out in the North End. Everything's going pretty well. He's very polite, told me I looked beautiful when I walked up. I thought that was sweet. But we're sitting down eating dinner, and he tells me that his sisters call him Stephen DeMarco. He's like kind of laughing, and I'm stunned. I'm like, there's no way he watches the show. I go, that's terrible. Do you watch the show? And he just like laughs it off. And that was kind of like my first red flag, where I was like, is this kid bragging that his sisters call him Stephen DeMarco? And why does his sisters even know what he does enough that's like devilish that his sisters are calling him Stephen DeMarco? That is crazy to me. I kind of just like move on. I take a mental note. I'm like, that's fucking scary, but whatever. Maybe he like thinks it's funny. He doesn't actually get how scary that statement is. So I'm like, whatever, we'll move on. He asks about previous relationships and like exes, which was my second like red flag. I would call it like an orange flag because I get it. People want to like know about that stuff. But on the first date, I'm kind of like, I don't really want to talk about it. And he's going on about how him and his ex of like 2 years just broke up. And then he asks me, and I just got out of a 6-year relationship. And his reaction was kind of like weird. So I just kind of was like, I don't know what you were expecting, but yeah, like I just got out of a fat relationship. But it just was very odd. But he's telling me he's like getting back into dating, and he just went on this terrible, terrible, terrible Hinge date, which I'm like, oh God, now I'm the follow-up from like a bad Hinge date. Also, I think telling your next date about how bad the last date was like is a red flag within itself as well. Like, don't talk bad about your dates. I think that says a lot about you than the person you went on the date with. So I just kind of was like, I don't like this conversation at all. Then he proceeds to tell me that he left midway through the date, left her in the North End at the restaurant, found the waiter on the way out, paid the tab, left, and then blocked her number because he didn't want to hear from her again. And I was like, again, that is terrible. Like, I couldn't even laugh. Like, I'm like, was that supposed to be impressive? Like, I think that is one of the worst things you could do to somebody. Like, you could have at least have the balls to say, like, hey, I think we could wrap up dinner. Like, I don't really feel anything here. But to leave somebody at a table on a first date is literally terrible. And he's like, oh, I found the server and, like, paid. Like, yeah, you should have given the girl like $500 too, in my opinion. Like, that is literally the least you could have done. I don't think you should have ever left that table. And his excuse was she was talking about zodiac signs too much. It's really not that big of a deal. I don't know why boys find that so weird. Like, it's very easy to just contribute to the conversation or just be like, I don't know my zodiac sign. I'm not into that stuff. And then, you know, just hold a conversation about something you're not interested in. It's just really not that bad. So I was pretty shocked to hear that this is the reason why he left her at the altar. Obviously, after hearing that he leaves dates midway through, I make a joke, like, you're not allowed to use the bathroom tonight, clearly. And he's like, ha ha ha. I'm like, no, seriously, like, I'm not getting stood up in the middle of a date. I don't care who the F you think you are. You're not using the bathroom tonight. Whatever. Laugh about it. Move on. We have dinner, drinks. And he's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, all right, but like, no fucking funny business. Like, I actually will find you and do terrible things if this is like an act you pull that you just like leave girls on dates. Back of my head, I'm like, this is my first date, my first Hinge date. He didn't need to know that. Out of a relationship of 6 years. Like, if I get stood up, that would literally pound me into the ground. And I probably wouldn't leave my room for a little bit, even though it's not that big of a deal. But whatever. I just was like, this isn't happening to me. So like, don't fuck around because I'll actually be pissed off and I'll like call my dad and my older brother and they'll like come get you. So like, I'm like, I'm in no business to be dealing with being left in the North End on a dinner date right now. I felt like an elementary school teacher. I was like, you have 5 minutes and then back to class. So whatever, he's like, no, I promise this date is going way better than the last one. Like, I would never leave. I'm like, okay, whatever, go to the fucking bathroom. I'm done with this conversation. Go pee. He stands up, turns away to go to the bathroom, grabs his jacket that has his wallet, keys, everything, last minute, not facing me, pulls it off the back of his chair and walks away. So I'm sitting there, you can ask my friends, I texted all of them being like, this fucking kid is leaving mid-date. Like, he just said he had to go to the bathroom and he's pulling his jacket with him. Like, this has to be a weird kink of his, like leaving girls mid-date and basically like telling them that he's gonna do it. I was shocked. I was like shaky. I felt sick. I was like, I just got ditched in the middle of my first date. Like, what the literal fuck? My roommate Katie looked him up on Instagram and was ready to DM him. I was freaking out. I was like going my phone to low-key send a text to see if he blocked me because he's like, oh, I just blocked that other girl on the way out. So I'm like, if he blocks my number, that's when I know like he has officially exited the building and I am now sitting by myself. But whatever, I'm like, breathe, just sit, chill. I had a glass of wine. I was enjoying my glass of wine. He took his sweet ass time in the bathroom, but he ends up coming back. And so when he's walking back, I'm like, oh, you think you're fucking funny, don't you? And he's like, you liked the jacket pull? I'm like, no, I thought that was weird. And that's just like not cool. So whatever, I just had now written down in my mental, like 4 different red flags that I was not loving about this individual. And he definitely wasn't cute enough to be acting this way at all. Like, it just was unfortunate all around. So like, whatever, I'm just like, I'm gonna finish out this date and I'll probably never see this kid again. I'm not gonna share too many details, but he doesn't live in Southie. So when the date's like wrapping up, he's like, I'd love to come back to yours. And I'm like, sorry, that's not happening. Like, in what world? Basically, in what world? And he throws a little tantrum, freaks out, and is like, all right, fine, leave, Uber away then. And I was like, okay, I will. So I called my Uber. He said, how many is that Uber called for? I said 1. I'm leaving. Bye. And I left. He had like 8 old fashions at dinner too, so he got drunk. And he texted me the next morning saying, I had so much fun. I would love to run it back again soon. I pulled a him on him and deleted Hinge, and I never answered his number. I was telling the Uber driver on the ride home about the whole date. He was freaking out. He was hilarious. But yeah, deleted Hinge. I was like, I will never meet a stranger again. And then I never answered his text, and I haven't heard from him again. So I think he got the vibe. But yeah, that was my crazy first Hinge date story. And I actually saw him posted in Are We Dating the Same Guy? And the comment section was like literally run. So it sounds like I'm not the only one who had this experience with this individual. But basically, yeah, if you're wondering how my dating's been going, I know I jokingly said I was going on a date with a 73-year-old, but it's not going well. So I think I'm giving up. I've deleted Hinge. I did have a company email me asking to do a like brand deal on a dating app. I don't know if it's for me. I think I'm gonna go off the referral system, friend of a friend, somebody that's backed by somebody reputable that I care about, and that's how I'm gonna find my future man. Happy Friday. Bye.
Get ready with me for school while I tell you guys a story on how I told my mom that I was pregnant at 17. By the way, this is the bump. So I'm gonna start off the story by saying that I was not allowed to date or have any boyfriends, but my mom found out that me and my boyfriend were dating at 6 months, and she told me to break up with him, and I was like, okay, but I didn't. Obviously, we continued dating, and then I found out I was pregnant a year and like a few months with him. I didn't want to tell my mom. Like, I was literally gonna try to hide it for as long as I can, but my boyfriend and his family were telling me like, no, like, yeah, like, tell your mom, like, you need to go to appointments and all that. I'm like, you're right, like, I can't do this without my mom. So I think we waited like a week or 2 to tell her, because I was just scared, and we were trying to find a day for him to come, because my mom doesn't know that we're still together. So like, how am I supposed to ask, can he come over, when I'm not supposed to even be talking to him? But basically, like, I think I asked the day of, I was like, can he come over? We need to tell you something. And I don't know how it didn't click that like I was pregnant, but she basically thought that I was trying to bring him over so that we could talk to her about being together with her permission, basically. And she was telling me like, no, you already know my answer, you're not allowed to date, there's no point in bringing him. And I was like, no, like, please, like, we need to tell you something, like, please. And I was trying to do it at a park. I thought like it would be good scenery, I don't know, to calm her down or something, but she was not having it. She was like, I'm gonna go to the pool and I'm gonna tan. If he's gonna come, like, bring him to the pool, because I'm not going over there. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know if she knew I was being serious, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna bring him to the pool then while you're tanning, because we need to tell you something. And she was like, okay, whatever, I'll be waiting. And he got here and we walked to the pool, and there was other people at the pool, but I was like, whatever, I need to get this over with. And we saw her sitting down in like a lounge chair thingy, and she saw us and she looked very irritated. And so I was like more scared to tell her because she looked mad already. But we sat down next to her, and I literally started off by saying, okay, so me and him have been together for a year and 4 months, because I thought that was better to start with than saying I'm pregnant and then she's thinking like, with this guy that you're not even dating. So I told her, and then she was like, without my permission? And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, and I am pregnant. She literally like lunged out of her chair at my face. She was like, are you, like, what? Are you serious? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm sorry. And for like a good 5 minutes, she was just like, I'm waiting for you to tell me it's a joke. Like, please tell me you're just kidding. I was like, no, like, I'm being serious. And ultimately, she reacted better than I thought. She said she was disappointed, but she was like, I'm gonna support you guys. She also asked us a bunch of questions that are irrelevant, but the whole thing was just sad. I was sad. I was like crying. My mom crying. My mom actually told the rest of my family for me, which I was annoyed by at first, but now I'm grateful she did that, because I don't know how I was gonna tell the rest of the family. Basically, my mom just dropped it onto the rest of my family at random times, and she made sure to do it when I was with them. My granny came over one day, and we were literally all just relaxing like in sala, and we were all just relaxing. And my mom just tells my granny, like, yeah, she's pregnant. Not in a happy tone. She was like, yeah, she's pregnant. And my granny was like, what? Like, she was freaking out in Spanish and then started crying, and then she like lectured me for the longest time ever. Oh my god, I hated it. But yeah, it was basically everyone's reaction. It wasn't nothing crazy, thankfully. Now that I'm 7 months, I think everyone is more happy or excited. My boyfriend's family was definitely way more excited and happy since the beginning. But yeah, my family's like looking for names and stuff, so I'm excited, and I'm glad that the emotional part, like with everyone being surprised and mad at me, is done. I would do like a story time on how I told my boyfriend, but he was with me like the whole entire time. Like when we took the test, like he was supporting me since the start. So yeah, I was hella scared to tell my mom alone. That was probably the worst part of this pregnancy for me, to be like so honest, like so for real. It was just so hard because I could barely tell my mom that I got like a bad grade or something, you know what I mean? I knew she wasn't gonna kick me out or anything of that like extreme though, because she's my mom and like I know she loves me. I was prepared for, you know, all the like, oh, I'm just disappointed, and any parent would be. I'll tell you one thing though, nobody expected this from me. And then people ask me if it was planned. I'm like, no, why would I plan this? Okay, this is the finished look. I do my lip combo later, but yeah, thank you guys for watching this story time.
Because if you're gonna make a video about me calling me out by my first and last name, don't forget to add in all the details. Because what you're not gonna do is paint yourself as some sort of victim when I didn't do anything to you. Backstory: I went on a very spontaneous date directly after matching with this girl on Tinder. We both had a bad day. We decided to go out for a drink. Fine. Then the next day, she basically invited herself over to my house after I said no multiple times. And then a couple days later, I decided that it wasn't working for me, so I let her down easy. Okay, there's the backstory. Let's get into it. After all that, she decided to make a video about me on TikTok. I don't know if you could call it lying, but she's leaving out all these details that sort of are important to the story. So let's go point by point through her video. I will give you screenshots of text messages and everything, because you're not going to come on here saying stuff about me that isn't true. Thanks. Okay, she starts off the video with some nonsense that she mentions again later, so I'll get to those points in a moment. And then she goes into her being a 5'8" mask. I really don't know what that has to do with anything. I'm 5'5". I'm not really sure what connection that has. I never really said anything about her height or my height or the comparison, so I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. On to the next point. She also mentioned in the introduction that I was making fun of her shaking ass. Show me where. I don't remember posting or saying anything making fun of her shaking ass. The next point about getting me chocolates. Okay, this is the long part of the story. So the day after we met up for drinks, I had told her all day long that I was having the worst cramps, the absolute worst cramps. And she asked what makes me feel better when I'm having cramps. I said laying in bed, heating pad, and chocolate. She asked me what kind of chocolate I like. I told her, and she was like, I'm gonna get you some chocolate. And I said, no, thank you. You don't have to do that. So I thought that was the end of that. But then later on, she asks if I want to go for a sweet treat. I said, normally I'd say yes, but I really just want to lay in bed right now. I really just didn't want to be seeing anyone. I wanted to be nice about it though. And so this is what I said. How about I just bring the sweet treat and then you can enjoy it from your bed? And she sent a voice message along with that. I said, I love that you're offering, and I don't want you to think that I don't want to see you, because I do. I'm sorry, that was a lie. But it's really okay. I don't want you to have to drive all the way down here. Again, I'm just trying to say, like, please don't come without saying that. Just trying to be nice, again. Continues on to say, I'll make it quick. I promise you'll make your 9 o'clock bedtime. Haha. And then she sends another voice message talking about, you know, if you don't want me to come, it's fine. I'm not pressuring you. But she goes on to say, I really want to come. I promise, you know, I'll leave before your bedtime, all this stuff. So I was like, you know what? it's now like getting so many times that she's asking. I don't want to keep saying no because I felt bad. I was trying to be nice yet again. And so I just said, okay, let's do it. Just don't judge my frumpy look. Haha, okay. And then, so I sent her my address and I said, how far is it from you? She said, not that far. I said, tell me how far. 25 minutes. So I'm going to take that one down because I'm tired of covering up my address. But then she was like, because I knew that she lived at least 40 minutes away from me. I had a feeling that she'd already been on her way, even though I said no already. And so when she said 25 minutes, that was confirmation for me. And I was like, wow, that seems really short. And she was like, oh yeah, I was already on the road. Okay. So then on her way out, I was walking her out of my house after this whole chocolate thing. And she was walking behind me and took both of her hands and hit my behind pretty hard. And it caught me off guard. It scared me. I screamed and was like, what the, like, okay. And she was like, sorry, you just have a big badonkadonk. And I said, thanks. I work hard for it. Yeah. And so I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not going to be one to do something like that on the second meetup. It's just, that's not for me. Maybe it's for somebody else, but it's not for me. Okay, so then she goes on in this video that she made about me to talk about the text message that I sent her, which is when I was sort of like breaking it off. Let's take a look at that, shall we? All right, sorry, it's like cropped and cut off a little bit, but hey, so I've just been thinking about this a lot in general, and in general today. I just don't think we're that great of a match. You're so kind and funny and beautiful, and I'm just not feeling it between us that much. I'm sorry. I truly hope the best for you. Then she says, I understand and it's okay. To be fair, we don't know each other at all besides the basics, and I kind of jumped the gun and ran on it. I appreciate the kind words. You're beautiful and sweet. I hope maybe we can start with being friends. We should start with being friends. Otherwise, I hope the best for you. I didn't respond to this because I didn't want to, and I had no intention of being friends. That was it for me. Okay, on to the next point. Then she rambles on and on and on, and eventually gets to the point of I blocked her on TikTok and I posted a TikTok about her. Okay, I blocked her on TikTok because she was lurking on my TikTok, she was lurking on my Instagram, and I didn't feel like having that. Okay? Then I posted a general video, which you can go and look, that says, I'm so tired of dating because either I'm way too into her or she's way too into me. Like, that's basically what it said. This video was not directly about her. I didn't tag her. I didn't mention her. It was literally a picture of me and some words on the screen. She says in this video that this video is about her. About her. Sorry, this is about my general dating experience. Sure, you added to, my experience with you added to this general experience, but it's not specifically about you. And also, before I continue, you can stop calling me the B word. I will not tolerate that. Thank you. And she goes on to talk about I didn't even give her a chance. I don't need a lot of time to realize if I'm just not feeling a connection with somebody. And I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to lead you on. That's unfair to both of us. Then she goes on to talk some nonsense about princess treatment and how I wanted princess treatment and she could have given it to me. Yeah, I do want princess treatment. I'm sorry. This might be blunt, but I just didn't want it from you. I'm sorry. And then this is the last point. At the very end of her video, she starts talking about how she invited me to fajitas and margaritas. Let me give you the extra details on that. So she asked me, this was on Thursday, she asked me what I was doing the next day. I said, I'm going to try to go to this flash tattoo thing tomorrow. And then you found a shop, blah, blah, blah. She acknowledges that I said that. And then she goes, after she asked me what I was doing the next day, and I told her, I don't know what you have planned for tomorrow, as if I didn't say it right there, but I would, a small adventure interest you. I just wanted to see you for a little. Down here, I know you can't see it, but I said, so I am, as I said, I'm going to the tattoo thing. It's all the way in, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. It's all the way in Fredericksburg, and I'm not sure how long it'll take. Then here, in this voice note up here, she's like, oh, the real reason that I was inviting you is because I want you to meet my friends, and it's her two friends that are together, and she didn't want to be a third wheel. And, basically inviting me to a double date. She wasn't just inviting me to fajitas and margaritas to wine and dine me, as she said. She was inviting me on a double date to meet her friends. Mind you, 4 days after I had just met her. And so I said, I mean, we literally just met. I don't know if meeting friends is really the next step. And plus, like I said, I have no idea how long I'll be there at the tattoo shop. She also mentioned that this fajitas, margaritas, this place that they were going to go also just so happened to be in the same town that I was going to go to get my tattoos. And then goes on to say, okay, fair. No, you're so right. We did just meet. Let me take it back. How about we plan something for next week instead? I didn't mean to push you or overstep in any way. So I think I touched on all the points, gave you all the actual details because she wanted to let them out so it could serve her conveniently and paint me as some sort of bad guy. Let me just end this by saying we met on Monday. This ended on Friday. This whole thing is a span of 5 days. 5 days, okay? And last thing for real, it's okay for people to not be interested in you. Sometimes the more you get to know, the more you talk, the more someone realizes that you're not a match, and that's okay. I wasn't mean. I wasn't rude. I said nice things. Like, it's okay. You didn't have to come on here and try to play the victim. You didn't have to do that. And also, now I'm blocked. I unblocked her to see that video. I guess she figured out that I was watching it somehow, and now I'm blocked. So, bye.
I've been asked by a few people to share my story of something that was very traumatic for me that I went through a while ago, and I think I'm at that point where I can do that. So this story takes place a long time ago. I was married, had 2 babies, and it was the summertime, and I remember my husband coming to me and saying that he wasn't feeling good, and he told me all of these symptoms that he was having. Now, all the symptoms that he listed, of course, I was a WebMD doctor at that time because I just had 2 babies and I was constantly Googling stuff. And so, of course, when I Googled his symptoms, it came back as Hodgkin's lymphoma. I pointed that out to him and he was in denial and he said there's no way that I have cancer. He was very healthy. He was like 31 years old. He had never gotten sick or anything like that. So he was in denial that he even had that. But he also mentioned that he had a lump growing in his armpit area, and at this time it was like probably the size of a golf ball with like half of it sticking out in his armpit. So he decided, instead of going to see a regular doctor, to go to an urgent care to see if they could help him. So the urgent care thought it was a boil, so they cut it open and they stuffed it. They tried to squeeze it, nothing came out, so then they stuffed it with gauze, told him to take some Tylenol, go home, follow up with them if anything changes. Well, the pain continued for him, and so he went back to the urgent care to follow up with them, and they were like, well, there's nothing that we can do because it's not a boil, so there's nothing else. So he wound up getting doctor's appointments. We went to several different doctors. We went to several different ERs. We couldn't get anybody to help us. I went with him on some of these doctor visits because I was very concerned about his health and I wanted him to get checked out and make sure it wasn't cancer. But unfortunately, the doctors weren't listening to me because I was just the wife and I'm not a medical professional. And it was him as the patient where he was like downplaying the symptoms that he was telling me about to the doctor. So he wasn't very helpful. At one point, he found me rolling around on the floor in the living room in so much pain. I was in excruciating pain. If I was pregnant, it would have felt like I was going into labor. At the time, I didn't know it, but I had kidney stones. Never had that before. Worst pain ever because it was literally like childbirth. So he saw me in pain and he was like, we need to go to the emergency room, see what's going on. And I was like, I'm not going to the emergency room. If you're not, then I'm not. So we made a deal that if I went to the emergency room, he would go with me and he would admit himself. At this point, it's been a month and a half that we've been going back and forth with doctors. So I was hopeful that maybe we could get help this time around. So we admitted ourselves into the emergency room, and in hindsight, it probably looked like we were a bunch of off the rocker type people looking for something. If you know, you know, right? Well, this one nurse, her name's Madonna. She came to me and she was telling me that I had like a UTI, blah, blah, blah. After I got tests done and whatnot, came to the conclusion I had the kidney stones. So she was wrong about me. So then I told her, well, my husband's in the room across the hallway. Can you go check him out? Because I really think that he has cancer. And she was like, well, honey, if we all Googled our symptoms online, then we'd all think we were dying of cancer, which is fair. That's fair. But when he had every single symptom of Hodgkin's lymphoma that you can find on Google, come on. So Nurse Madonna went and checked him out and she was like, oh no, you just have heartburn. You'll just have to take antacid for the rest of your life. So of course we leave that emergency room, same thing. Nurse Madonna will come back into play later on into my story, so remember her. So now at this point, that was on like a Friday, and then by a Sunday he's back in excruciating pain. So I said, I'm getting fed up with this. We need someone who's going to listen to us. So again, I dragged him to the emergency room and I begged the doctor who was there to listen to me. And I told her everything that's been going on for the past month and a half. So she took me seriously, and she referred us to another doctor who was at the Center of Infectious Disease up the road. So we went straight to them with an appointment. We got in, and it was this other doctor, Dr. Link, who is my hero. He listened to me. He took me seriously, even though I wasn't the patient. He listened to me. I told him all the symptoms. And I could see the look on his face change. And he was like, I'm calling the hospital. They're going to have a room ready for you. You need to go across the street to the hospital right now. And when I was like, well, we have kids and can we go get, overnight bags? He was like, no, immediately go to the hospital this second. So at that point, it was bittersweet because it was like, for a month and a half, I've been trying to get these doctors to listen to me and for my husband to get somebody to listen to him. And so it was nice to finally have someone who took us seriously. So we go to the hospital, he gets admitted, and then he gets put on the schedule to have a biopsy of the lump that is growing in his armpit. So we wait a few days for the test results to come back from the biopsy, and I remember going to the hospital because he was still in there after the surgery, and he had called me when I was on my way, and he was like, the doctor came in, he's gonna wait to talk to me until you get here. So I said, okay, cool, I'm almost there. So I remember going to the hospital and getting off the elevator. My husband was sitting right there on the bench in front of the elevator, and I could just see by the look on his face that it wasn't going to be great news. So we went to the room and the doctor came in and he explained it to me, and he said that my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. So fuck you, Madonna. And I just remember at that time for me, as soon as the doctor told me it was stage 4 cancer, I remember just looking out of the window of the hospital and watching all these cars drive by. And I was just like screaming internally. And I was like, how is anyone going on with their day when we just got this news? Like, I felt like my world stopped in that moment, and I was so confused. I started disassociating. I couldn't even hear the rest of the things that the doctor was telling me. He was going on about chemo and stuff like that. I know several different treatments for my husband. I can't explain to you the way I felt when I received that news, because here I was from the very beginning for the past month and a half worried that it could be cancer and no one taking me seriously because I wasn't the patient. And now here I am getting told, unfortunately, I was right, which is the worst feeling in the world. And of course it was stage 4. And at stage 4, you're in trouble. So before my husband leaves the hospital, we're already on the computer doing research and stuff. And so he came to the conclusion that he wanted to try other alternative methods to battle the cancer before he does chemo. We did research on chemo and it breaks down your body. He wasn't interested in that right off the bat. He was really adamant how he wanted to try these other methods first. And then if that didn't work, to do chemotherapy. Me being a wife and a mother of 2 young kids, it was hard for me to kind of swallow that, because you want him to jump into chemo so he can be cancer free. But also you have to respect his wishes because he's the one who's going to be going through it, not me. So I was a very supportive wife. I told him, you have a month to do all of these methods that you want to do. I will help you. I will do research with you and we will go from there. If it doesn't work, you will be getting chemo. So that was the agreement. So we started doing all the methods at home. Once he's released from the hospital, he's juicing, he's eating clean, he's eating a certain diet. He's also taking other medicines along with eating good to help battle the cancer. So at the same time, he came home from the hospital. Our oldest was starting pre-K. So she unfortunately came home with a cold from pre-K, which he wound up catching. And because he had stage 4 cancer, it really took a toll on him. So he was having a hard time breathing and he was coughing a lot. And he told me, well, I'm going to go lay down because I'm not feeling good. And I kind of looked at him and I can tell that he was very sick. So I called the on-call nurse and I told her what's going on. And she told me he needs to go to the hospital. Either we're going to send an ambulance or you can take him, but he needs to immediately get back to the hospital. So I threatened him because he was refusing to go back to the hospital. And I told him, well, you could either go in an ambulance or I can take you. So I was able to convince him to go to the emergency room. And I knew it was serious because once we got to the emergency room, we didn't even have to wait. They dragged him to the back immediately. And I noticed the tiles on the floor as we're walking down the hallway to his room in the emergency room. It went from green, yellow, we were placed in red. So once I realized he was in the red section, I knew that this was trouble. So they wound up finding out that he had pneumonia. The cold that he had gotten from our daughter turned into pneumonia. I can't even talk. And so they gave him a bunch of antibiotics to make him feel better. Now, once he was sent back up to the oncology room, I came back to the hospital one day and I found out that the nurses had started chemotherapy against his wishes. Part 2. All right, this is part 2. Where I left you off was when he went to the emergency room for a cold because he didn't look right. I rushed him to the hospital and we found out that he had pneumonia. And so they pumped him with a lot of antibiotics. And the nurses there were telling me if I didn't bring him when I did, he would have never woken back up. He was planning on going to sleep it off because he wasn't feeling good. And that would have been the end of it. So luckily I listened to my intuition. I dragged him back to the hospital. They were able to give him all the antibiotics to make him feel better. Now, once he was feeling better, they sent him up to the oncology room, or the oncology floor, excuse me. And I was visiting him on one of these days, and I told the nurse, I said, hey, I'm going to go get my daughter. She has a doctor's appointment. I'll be back. And she was like, okay, we're just going to give him some medicine to make him go to sleep, some anxiety medicine, and that's it. We'll let him sleep it off and relax. I said, okay, cool. I'll be back soon. So I go and I take my daughter to the doctor. She wasn't with me. I had a family member meet me at the doctor's office with my daughter. Now, that family member was my mother-in-law. I have no friends or family in the state that I was living at. It was all his family. And so she brought my daughter and I looked in the back seat. There was no car seat. They brought my 4-year-old in the back seat with a regular seat belt. And when I questioned where her car seat was, she was like, we don't have one. We must have left it at your house. So I went off. I lost my mind because here I was trying to save my husband's life. And then here you go putting my 4-year-old child's life in danger in a car with no seat belt, car seat, whatever. And they were like, oh no, her grandpa was in the back seat with his arm across her. That's great. I love that. So I told her straight up, my husband was already just in the ICU. I don't need my daughter next to him. Don't ever do that again. So that's what I was dealing with family at this time. So I take care of my daughter with her appointment, and I wound up bringing her with me along with my son. My son was 1 year old at the time. So I was like, clearly they can't handle children. Brought them with me to the hospital. And I remember walking into my husband's room, and he was hooked up to an IV that was pumping chemotherapy into him. And he was just waking up. And he was mad as hell, and he was going off on the nurse. And the nurse was telling him that they were told to give him chemotherapy, and he was still refusing it. He was like, get this out of me. So apparently while he was sleeping, they gave him sleep medicine, and while he was sleeping, they hooked up an IV to him and started the chemo treatment. Now, my husband never wanted to do chemo through an IV. He said he would do chemo, but it would have to be through a port. He didn't want his veins being blown and the side effects from doing it that way with chemo. Now, the nurse was like, well, we already, shook this medicine up. The chemotherapy is already shook up and stuff like that. If you deny it, you're still going to be charged $11,000. My husband didn't care. He went off. He flipped his shit, obviously. But he wound up getting the chemo because they had already started it as he was waking up. So he was like, well, now I can't stop it. But the fact that she was threatening $11,000, okay. the incompetent type of doctors and rude doctors that we had to deal with is insane. So now he's doing chemotherapy in the hospital, and so we get an appointment with the oncologist to go get him his first appointment. He got a port put in eventually, and he was sent home, and now we're scheduled for chemotherapy, but he's still doing his things, the alternative methods at home as well. So he was diagnosed in August. As time's going on, I believe it was September when he wound up back in the hospital with pneumonia. September, October, November, I could just see the way that the chemo was slowly killing him. He was losing his hair. Obviously, that's a huge side effect. Just the way he looked in his face, like there was just no light behind his eyes anymore. You can tell that it was taking a lot out of him. So it was difficult for me to go with him to every chemo appointment and watch him kind of slowly fade away. And at this time, I was a stay-at-home mom. And so he was still working, but he decided he was going to teach me how to do his job, and his boss allowed me to tag along with him so I could learn, which it wasn't an easy task. His job was offloading trucks, so it was a very physically demanding job, and you were like lifting and running around 4, 5, 6 hours straight, sometimes longer than that. But I knew that one of us had to be working and he shouldn't be. He needed to be at home resting. So now at this point, it's been a few months. It's November now, and I have been leaving my son with the grandparents, and my daughter has been going to pre-K. Also, I had to make the hard decision to have my kids live with their grandparents for a few weeks. After he had the pneumonia scare, I wound up saying we have to get the kids out of the house because any sickness that they bring here can kill him, obviously. And at this point, we were fighting for his life. He had stage 4 cancer. So I made the difficult decision to have these grandparents take care of my children. It only lasted like 2 weeks, and then we brought them home for a little bit. But then like I would get scared again during the winter months, and then I would send the kids off for like the weekend or something. So it was kind of a little bit of a back and forth just to make sure my husband stayed healthy. Now by the end of November, my husband came to me and he just had a smile on his face, and he was like, I feel great. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, I don't think I have cancer anymore. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to get false hope. I need the doctor to tell me. He had a follow-up PET scan or CAT, I don't know I blocked it out. Whatever the scan is. CT scan, I don't know. He had a follow-up coming up in December around Christmas time. And I said, that's great. Keep that optimism. We have a scan coming up. If the doctor tells me you're cancer-free, then I'll believe it, because, you know, it's rough at this point. I'm going to work with him. He's teaching me all these things on top of trying to take care of my family and stuff like that. It was a very difficult time for me. So we go in December and get the scan, and sure enough, he was cancer-free, which is amazing. So he was doing the alternative methods, and he was doing the chemotherapy. So we were so happy to hear that he was cancer-free. Now, it had only been a few months since his diagnosis and treatments and stuff like that, but it was a lot for us to kind of process once we finally got this good news. So we try to make things go back to normal as much as we could after this, but just something changed between me and my husband. For me, I would disassociate a lot. I stopped eating, I stopped talking, I stopped sleeping. Everything was weighing down on me. I was trying to save my husband's life while taking care of my babies, while working a new job. So it was starting to weigh me down. I wound up developing an eating disorder when we did a lot of research for the cancer. So I wasn't eating the way I used to. And I was very scared at this point. I had, PTSD. I was going through a lot of things. And everyone was more concerned about my husband, obviously, because he was the one sick, that no one realized that I was kind of slowly losing my own life in a way as well. So my husband would get mad at me a lot. He had a lot of anger. He would yell at me, scream at me, call me names. We weren't getting along. I don't know when that changed or how that changed, but I feel like during that battle, that all changed between us. Now, before the cancer battle, our life was great. He was an amazing man. He was so sweet, loving. He was a great father. All that stuff, fairy tale, okay? I literally had a thought before the cancer diagnosis that my life is perfect. I can't believe I'm living this life. And then the universe said, hold my beer. And that's when the cancer battle started. And I think during that was when both of us changed, obviously. I mean, it is life changing, but unfortunately in the worst way. So now I'll explain to you all the things that happened between me and my husband and what was going on with that, because it gets pretty intense and scary. So that'll be in the next part. So this is part 3. So after he was cancer free, we were trying to put our lives back together, but just something, we weren't meshing well with each other at this moment. I was going through my own thing. He was going through his own thing. So we were both trying to process what we had just gone through. And I think it wasn't working for us. So we tried to go on a vacation because we needed to reset. So we left the kids with his parents and we did a week cruise. When I tell you, I never slept as much as I did on this cruise. And it made him mad. So for me, the past few months, I had been taking care of everybody and not myself. I was exhausted. I stopped eating, I stopped sleeping, I stopped talking. I was so traumatized by what we had just been through, that once we got on this cruise and I knew there were activities for my husband to go do, there was endless foods. I didn't have to cook or anything. We had, the guys who come in and clean your room. I knew I didn't have to clean. The room had no windows. I just slept the whole time until we got to the ports of wherever we were going and we go off and do an excursion. But he was getting mad at me because I was just so exhausted and I wanted to sleep all the time. And then while we were on this cruise, he was also having side effects still from the chemo. Well, after the cruise, I'm still going to work for him and he's still coming along with me. Now, from the cancer-free announcement, which was in December of that year, to I think it was like June the following year, it's like 6 months, he comes back to me and he tells me he's not feeling good again. And so we go back to the doctor for a follow-up and he got another scan, and unfortunately the cancer came back, but this time it was in his bones, which means it's terminal. Now at this point, I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can be. I can see the look on my husband's face where he knows he's done for, that this is it. Me being optimistic, I'm like, no, I'm not taking that for an answer. Like, we can figure this out. We got this. The doctor recommended some other treatments, which would be like the bone marrow transplant, but my husband would be away at the hospital for 30 days and me and the kids wouldn't be able to see him. And it was just this daunting treatment that sounded terrifying. And at that point he said he's not interested in doing that. He'll just go back to doing the chemotherapy. So now he's terminal. His behavior towards me grew worse. He had a falling out with a friend who lived across the street from us, and that falling out created a new set of problems for us. Threats were being made to each other. The police had to get involved. Restraining orders had to be set in place. And it just became a living nightmare for me. The neighbor would just come out and start screaming profanities at my husband. He tried to yank my husband out of a moving car as he was driving out of our driveway. The neighbor came running out of his driveway, opened up the passenger door where my husband was, and tried to pull him out. Again, my husband is terminal at this time, and you can tell that he's not well. And so the police were called. They didn't arrest the neighbor, so I filed a restraining order because the neighbor was posting our address online. It became very intense. At one point, my husband would fly out of state to go to like a cancer treatment center out in a different state, and try to get some treatment out there. So me and the kids would be by ourselves at home. And I remember like 11 o'clock at night in my bedroom, I could hear rocks hitting my window. So the neighbor would stand out there and throw rocks at the door. He would do things like that. He tried to break into our detached garage. There's crowbar marks on the doors, and we had to call the police and make a report. He came. He did a lot of things. There was a lot of crazy things going on. He walked into our driveway, pulled down his pants, and grabbed himself in front of our daughter's bedroom window. Called the police. The police weren't very helpful. The police were saying that I was lying because it was me who got the restraining order, and it was me who kept calling the police every time he did something. For whatever reason, the police didn't believe me. And at one point, my daughter was walking our dog on the side of our house, which we have a line of trees in between our house and the neighbor. And she said the neighbor was outside screaming something at her. So we switched. I told her to go inside. I'll finish walking the dog. So I was walking the dog in our yard. And when I turned back around to walk back into my house, a large rock came flying through the trees and hit my house. It was a brick house, so the rock left a large mark on the brick. It was like a scratch. And it was like this close to hitting the glass back door. So I called the police, and the police basically told me I was lying. They said a rock couldn't have been thrown through the tree line. So that's what we were dealing with. And at that point, it's time for us to move, because we can't live in this stressful situation with this going on while he's terminally ill. And there's a lot more things that was going on. He had his buddy come over and block me in my driveway while I was trying to leave my house. I had to call the police. The police came, saw me shaking. I was pretty much having a panic attack, saw me shaking, and the one police officer told me, you need to smoke a cigarette, you need to bite your nails, or you need to take some anxiety medicine, but you need to calm down. So that's when I knew we were never coming back to our family home, and we were gone. So during the time that we're having this battle with the neighbor, I'm falling asleep after work. I'm taking a nap. My husband wakes me up, and he's like, you're never going to believe this. The FBI was just at our door. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't believe you. And he was like, no, seriously, these two guys just came and told me some stuff. And then as he's trying to explain to me what just happened, I hear a knock at the door. So I run, and I'm like, I got to see this for myself. So when I open the front door, I see these two tall guys with aviator sunglasses, khakis, polo shirts. And they're like, hi, ma'am, we forgot to give your husband our business card, but we'll kind of reiterate what we just told him. So they hand me the business card. The business card says FBI. And they were like, we had to come and notify the families of names that were put on this certain list. It's a long time ago. There was a certain list put on the internet. If you know, you know. I don't want to talk about it here. And they were like, your husband's name is on that list. And I was like, oh. So they had to notify us, and then they told us they notified the local police. So if we ever called for an emergency, that they would take us seriously about suspicious activities, which again, we had already been involved with the police because of the restraining order on, yeah. So I was like, yeah, okay. So I didn't believe them. I thought it was some prank. And then they drive off in like a Honda Civic or like a Honda Accord. And I was like, this is suspicious. But it turned out it was true, because a few years later, I owned my own business, and I did a background check on myself. And what popped up was that I was on the FBI watch list, and it had like a little triangle that was yellow with like an exclamation point. And I was like, oh, so that wasn't like a joke. That was for real. So we kept their business cards. Luckily, nothing ever came from it. Thank goodness. But that was just kind of wild. And that was like, with everything going on. And my husband was like, he said to the agents, well, they can get in line because I'm terminally ill with cancer. And if that doesn't kill me, the guy across the street is, so they can get behind him. And I was like, oh, okay. So from the next part, I'm gonna explain to you some of the things that my husband was doing, which is pretty traumatizing for me. Okay, this is part 4. At this point, we just had FBI at our door. You know, my husband just told them to get in line behind cancer, and the dude across the street. So on top of all of this, my husband has grown to be very verbally abusive towards me. He's screaming, yelling at me all the time, calling me names, telling me I'm a horrible mother, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible wife, I'm nothing, just beating me down. We did wind up leaving our house and we moved into another house, and I wound up noticing one day bruises on my son's backside that were in the shape of the palm of a hand. It was like bruised with this mark. So I questioned my husband about it, and he said yes, that was him, because our son wasn't sleeping. At this point, my son is 2 years old. He wouldn't go to sleep, and so I gave him a spanking. So when I saw the bruises and he admitted to it, I threatened him and told him to never touch our son again. He has no business doing that, leaving marks on him. That's child abuse. I pointed it out to his mom, who was like, oh yeah, I saw that. And I said, well, you didn't come and talk to me about it? She said, no. Okay. So she did see the marks, but she didn't come to me and point it out. So I threatened both of them, and I told them to never touch my son. In that way, my husband has now become a terror. Every time we drove to work, it was an hour. It was a little over an hour drive to and from work. And the whole way there and the whole way back, my husband would just verbally abuse me, screaming at me the whole way, break me down as a person, tell me I was awful, stuff like that. So with the stuff that I was already dealing with before, during the first cancer battle, now he was adding on top of it. So I pretty much became like a shell of a person. And at this point, I went from a healthy weight to now I was severely underweight. You could see every bone in my body. I had no fat on my body. I was just a stick. But again, everyone was more focused on my husband because that's who had the cancer. So no one was really coming to me about it. But it was very difficult for me, obviously, as a person. I kind of just lost myself. And then with the abuse from my husband and the torment from the neighbor, everything just kind of piled up on me. So during all of this, the grandparents have been taking care of the kids. Even though I'm going to work with my husband, I'm not getting a paycheck because it was going to my husband. So I had to call up my husband's boss and tell him I need to get a paycheck. It was at this moment that I kind of knew I was being financially abused, because my husband would be like, it's our money, so even though it's in my name, it's still yours, but I was never allowed to have money. I was never given money to buy new clothes and stuff like that. For this job, I needed new clothes. I only had stay-at-home mom clothes. I didn't have work attire to go into this building and do my job. I needed new clothes. So I had to call up his boss myself and ask him to set me up on payroll because I needed my own paycheck. So my husband wasn't too happy about that. So at this point, my husband's going back to chemotherapy, kind of battling with insurance at this point because we didn't have any. And at the cancer center, this angel of a lady, her name is Stacy, she helped us get insurance. And as soon as my husband did one of the chemotherapy treatments, the insurance dropped us. And they were like, no, we're not covering this. So we were battling with insurance. We had no insurance, and it was just awful. We had to pay for all of his medication out of pockets and doctor's appointments out of pockets. So it was a very financially draining time for us. Now, shortly before we moved to this new house, we had to go to court for the restraining order violation. And while we were in court, we got asked all these questions. And, I had to tell them the truth. And I remember the attorney asking me, who was defending the crazy head, he was like, did you ever call his wife a bitch? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, why would you do that? I said, because she is one. When she's standing out on her front porch screaming to my husband, who's terminally ill, that he's a pussy, yeah, I'm gonna say you're a bitch. So the attorney thought he was gonna catch me in a lie, but I didn't lie. I was under oath. I told the truth. Unfortunately, the neighbors, even though they were under oath, they were lying through their teeth about everything. And after the whole judgment and stuff, which nothing came of the restraining order violation, the judge said, you guys are kind of both retaliating, so we're just going to drop it. So after the court case, somebody who was a witness in the stands, they came to us and they were like, he was talking so much trash about you guys in between our lunch break, and he was saying how much he was lying, and he was laughing about it. So I believe in karma, and I believe in God, so I feel like it'll catch up to him in due time. So I didn't worry about it because we were going to move, because I didn't feel peace at that house anymore. So we did move after that restraining order didn't help. Now at the new house, just one day my husband was throwing a tantrum, and so I called his mom. I had made him something to eat. He grabbed the plate, threw it at me. It hit the wall. Food was all over the place. So I took the kids out of the house and we went somewhere, and I called his mom to help me out. And I was like, I need your help. He's losing his mind. He's treating me so badly. So she went over to help him. And when I came back, I find a moving truck in my driveway, and they had already packed up all of my husband's belongings, and they were moving him to their house. So they took him out of my care and took them to their house without letting me know. So that was very hurtful for me. And then also, I kept picking my son up from their house and finding bruises and marks all over my son. I would come and pick him up. He'd have a swollen eye. He'd have bloody knees. At one point, I walked into the grandparents' house after work, and my son was on the top floor. I hear music blasting. The whole house smells like cigarette smoke. The TV is on for my son, but he's just wandering around. And again, at this point, he's like 2 years old. He's wandering around the top floor by himself. So I go to open the basement door, and it's locked. So the grandpa was down in the basement blasting music, smoking cigarettes, while my son was left upstairs by himself. So at that point, with all the bruises and everything, I was like, we're done. You're not watching him anymore, because clearly you're not watching him. So I decided to put him in a daycare that was up the street from my job. So they weren't happy with me for taking him out of their care, and they were mad. And then shortly after that is when they came and pretty much kidnapped my husband and took him to their house to have. So while my husband was in their care, and this is like as time is getting worse for my husband. He's becoming frail. He's becoming bedridden. You know, we had to go to the emergency room more times for other things. He had to have a surgery because one of the bones in his back had broken. He's being abusive to me. He's being abusive to our son. My son had a bruise underneath his eye, and I asked my husband about it, and he was like, well, he pissed me off, so I threw one of the Matchbox cars at him. Okay. So, it was kind of a relief when the parents came and picked him up and took my husband to their house, because I didn't have that hostility there anymore. But at the same time, they decided to take my daughter and tell me I'm not allowed to see my daughter anymore. So my husband's also saying that he wants a divorce, and I'm not allowed to see my daughter. So I said I carried her for 9 months over my dead body. You're not going to take her from me. So now we're going to go through custody battle and a divorce, right? Okay, next part coming up, part 5. So part 5, my husband is saying he wants a divorce. He wants to fight for custody. He took my daughter. He left my son with me. He's telling me I'm not allowed to see my daughter anymore. Sorry, time out. I forgot another little story that I needed to add into the last video, so I wanted to give that insight on this one really quick. Before we had moved to a new house, I remember one night my husband was being nice, which was weird because he was very hateful towards me at this time. And he was offering to make me a snack and a drink, and I was like, yeah, sure. Once I had finished eating that stuff and drinking the juice that he had brought me, I started to feel off, and I was like, I'm gonna go lay down because I'm not feeling good. So while I'm laying in bed, I could feel I was out of my mind. I could tell that something wasn't right, something was put in the food and drink. So I'm laying in bed, he keeps coming to check on me, and within 30 minutes, I finally got him to admit that he had put something in my food and drink. At this time, it's like midnight. I had nowhere safe to go. I had no friends or family. They were all his family and friends, and according to them, he could do no wrong, and they didn't really know how much stuff was going on between him and I, like how bad it was. So I wanted to call the police, but again, I was scared. I didn't want him to go to jail when he had cancer. I didn't want him to die in jail with cancer. So then I was like, I have to leave him. I have to get out of here. But at the same time, how is that going to make me look as the wife walking away from her husband who's fighting for his life, even though no one knew what was going on with me? So it was a very difficult thing for me to kind of come to, and it was very terrifying that he would do that to me. Okay, fast forward now to this part. And now his parents are taking care of him full time. So I'm back and forth between our houses, and at this point he's bedridden. He's unable to get out of bed. You have to help him to the bathroom. He's taking a lot of medicine. I'm full-time working at his job where he's no longer coming with me because he's so bad that it's just me now. I've taken over. I was working 2 jobs. It was the same job, but at different locations during the same time. So I was going back and forth between 2 buildings, taking care of 2 of my kids. But now his parents had full-time custody of him as caregiving. Now my husband had made friends, and this friend was always constantly coming over to his parents' house. And I started noticing that his medicine that he was given, because he's terminally ill, he's given the hard stuff. I noticed that his medicine was becoming less and less every time I came and checked on him. I pointed it out to his mom, and I said, we need to keep an eye on this because I think his friend might be taking it to sell. And she was like, I got you, don't worry about it. So at one point I'm home by myself, and his dad, his brother, and this friend all came, jumped into our cars. I had my car that I paid for, that I was able to get once I started getting paychecks, and that my husband had his longtime car, and then he had 2 other cars that he had bought so he could fix them up and sell at the beginning of like the second time he became terminally ill. He was still up and about doing things, so he was working on these cars so he could turn around and sell them for more. Well, one day I look out and I just see everybody jump into cars, and the cars are gone. They took the cars to his parents' house. I had just gotten back from the grocery store, so I had stuff in the trunk of one of the cars. So I had to go drive up the road to his parents' house and demand the stuff that they had just taken from me. And they were refusing to. They were like, no, we're not. Those are his cars. These are his things. At this point, he's like at the end of his life. This is like the last few months of his life. Things have gotten out of hand. He has lost his mind. He's telling me lies about his parents. He's telling lies about me to his parents. I'm getting phone calls from his friends saying, why are you cheating on him? He said you have a boyfriend and the boyfriend's been coming over. Why would you do that to him? There is so much crazy stuff going on. I thought I was losing my mind. So I would have to explain myself to them, like, I don't have a boyfriend. Nobody's been coming over. I'm here by myself with my son. He took my daughter away. We're about to go through a divorce apparently, and I'm trying to fight to have my daughter back. So he was only allowed to have my daughter for so long because I found out that the grandparents were leaving my daughter with him to care for him. They expected my daughter to be a caregiver to him, which she was around like 6 years old, something like that, give or take. And they were expecting her to take care of him. He was a bedridden man. What if there was a fire? So I called my mother-in-law and I said, do you really have our daughter taking care of him? And she was like, I can't talk about this right now. So she hung up on me. So I called his oncologist and I spoke to him about it. I said, they took him out of my care. They're forcing our 6-year-old to take care of him. I said, could this cancer have spread to his brain and caused him to behave this way? And he was like, oh yeah, absolutely. The doctor profusely apologized to what his family was doing to me. I went to my boss, who is a longtime friend of my husband's, and I explained to him something crazy is going on. I don't know what's happening. I explained everything that's happening, and I said, I feel like they want everything that's his. They want to take everything from me because they think that's my son, that's our belongings. And he was like, well, why would they do that? Why would they do that to you? And I said, I don't know. We had such a great relationship with his parents for years. And then all of a sudden when my husband got cancer, the dynamics changed. His dad, he was constantly degrading me as a person and talking shit to me. I don't know how our relationship got to that point. I don't know how the relationship between my husband and I got to that point. I mean, it just got so bad. I was living in fear every single day. I was calling my best friend, who lived in a completely different state from me, and explaining to her every single day the stuff that had been going on, and that I feared for my life and I didn't know what to do. It was terrifying. And while we were still living in the other house with the crazy neighbor, the neighbor had threatened to kill both of our cats that were outdoor cats. I forgot about this part. The neighbor had threatened to kill both of our cats. We had it in a text message. In the state that we lived, it is a felony offense to do that to an animal. Well, my one cat showed up. She was barely breathing. She passed away in my closet and turned out to be pneumonia from a broken rib. I had the proof that it was the neighbor. Cops didn't do anything. The next one was my cat came home with a bullet hole in his leg. He was I know that my cats should not have been outside. I did everything that I could to keep my cats indoors. And my cat specifically knew how to open the front door. I have a video of it for proof. He would hang on the handle with his big fat ass and he would open the front door and walk out. And that's what happened this time, that he got out of my house and returned the next day with a bullet wound. I had to rush him to the vet. He had his leg amputated. Oh my God, I'm getting so upset. He had his leg amputated and now has 3 legs. It has been years since that has happened. That cat is happy and healthy, and I thank God every day that that cat survived. So there was a lot of crazy stuff happening. So after he was telling me that I couldn't see my daughter, I refused to hear that, and I went and I saw my daughter. I grabbed her, I took all of her stuff, and I brought her back home, and I told him pretty much fuck off. If you want a divorce, go ahead and get it. He's angry texting me all the time. He's cussing me out, screaming and yelling at me, calling me all the time, cussing me out, claiming things, spreading rumors about me. It was awful. It was the worst time of my life. Everyone is pretty much looking to me like I'm the liar, that I'm doing something wrong. My boss, his parents, his friends. It was an intense, crazy time. I was by myself, no friends or family in this state. Sorry, I had a change of scenery. So at this point, I'm feeling very isolated by everything that's going on. So my best friend decides to come into town and spend the weekend with me. She's been hearing about everything that I've been telling her that's been going on for the past few years, and she's very worried about my mental health and everything, and she's scared for my safety. So she decided to come and like cheer me up for that weekend. So she wound up seeing my husband. We went and visited him, and that weekend he was optimistic. He was very happy, and he was telling her, I'm gonna beat this. I'm gonna be cancer free. Now, mind you, at this point he has lost a lot of weight. He has stopped going to the bathroom a month prior, and he stopped eating and drinking. So my best friend kind of knew, she's in the medical field. She knew that this was kind of his last hurrah and that it was coming soon. So of course, after she had left, it was like the next day, he just wasn't waking up anymore. He was just sleeping all the time. And the week before, his mom was mad, and I remember her yelling at my husband and saying, she was screaming at him saying, you need to stop acting this way. Because my husband, he wasn't in his right of mind at this point. He was out of it, and he was like trying to turn the TV on or something, and he was just talking incoherently. So his mom got frustrated and was like yelling at him, and then his dad was like, you need to hire a nurse to come and take care of him. Now, during this time, my husband did not want to go into hospice. He wanted to stay at home and have us take care of him. That was his wishes from the beginning. And so we did that. We followed his wishes. But now his parents were getting overwhelmed with taking care of him. I think they took care of him for a total of a month, where I had taken care of him for almost 3 years. And I never complained about it. But his parents took care of him for almost a month, and they were telling me we need to hire a nurse. Mind you, I didn't have enough money to pay for a nurse, okay? I barely had the money to pay for his medication. But just the thought, remembering his mom screaming at him in his face a few days before he died, I hope that haunts her, because you don't treat people that way, especially when he was in the position that he was in. But what? And also remember, they took him out of my care without my consent. So now the weekend after my best friend came to visit, like I said, that Monday, he wasn't coherent. He wasn't waking up. He was sleeping all the time. So we just said, oh, it's probably the medicine that's making him really sleepy. And I asked his mom about the medicine, and I said, did you figure out what's going on? And she was like, yeah, I noticed that all the pills are gone and there's only one left. And the last time I had checked, he had a full bottle. So someone had come to visit him and took all of his medicine and left him for one. But his mom, luckily, she listened to me this one time about that medicine, and she hid another bottle in her closet. So she had more medicine for him, luckily, because unfortunately the next day he would pass away and he desperately needed that medicine. And so the next part, I'll explain to you how I found out my husband died, because that's traumatic. This is part 6 of my traumatizing story with my husband. So I left off that someone was stealing his medicine, and over the weekend he was coherent and speaking, and he was optimistic that he was going to be cancer free. And by that Monday, he was out of it. He wasn't waking up. He was sleeping all the time, and we did find out that a friend was stealing the medicine. So that was on the Monday when we found out the medicine was missing, and he was left with one more pill. But luckily, my mother-in-law listened to my warning that his medicine is disappearing somehow, and she had another bottle, so we had more medicine for him. Now, the next day was a Tuesday, and in the morning before work, I would always drive to his parents' house to say good morning to him. And sorry, this is the hardest part. So I would drive over to his parents' house every morning to say good morning to him before work. And that morning, he didn't wake up when I said goodbye. I said, I gave him a kiss, and I said, I love you, I'll see you later. And then I went to work. At this time, my daughter was going to school, so my in-laws were taking her to school for me in the morning time. So I was dropping her off, and then I would take my son to his daycare up the road from my job that was like an hour away. That morning at work, we got finished early. So around 10:30 in the morning, just something told me I needed to call my mother-in-law to check on my husband. I would usually text my husband to check on him, but just this morning was like, obviously I couldn't text or call him because he was so out of it. I had this thought to reach out to her and see what was going on. So when I went to go use my phone to like text her or call her, my phone wasn't working. It turns out my phone was disconnected, which is a whole nother story. So I didn't want to call my mother-in-law from work, because if something bad did happen, I didn't want to have that moment at my job. So I was like, let me just run up the store, go to Verizon, and get my phone reconnected. Now, my phone was disconnected because of my boss. My boss was mad at me for, again, my husband lied about me to everybody. My phone was on my boss's plan because it was my work phone. I needed it for the job that I was doing for my boss. My boss wound up getting fired. And the company that we worked for wound up hiring me as my own business to take over him. They never liked him. They wanted to get rid of him. My husband had convinced them like a year before this whole situation happened, like a year or two, to hire me with my own company. So they wound up firing my boss that previous Friday. And again, my husband lied to my boss and said it was all my idea, it was all my doing, when I had nothing to do with it. My husband's the one who set up the company for me to run. And he's the one who put it in the place that we worked in their ear that, hey, we're going to open our own business, you can hire us. He did it so that he knew that me and the kids would be financially taken care of when he passed. He was worried that our boss would fire me, because I took over his job a year or two before he passed away. So he was worried at this time about my boss firing me after his death, and then I wouldn't have any income. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't really have a lot of work background. It was hard to find a job that I could take care of my family on. So he had that all set up and planned a year or two in advance. Now, they did wind up firing my boss that Friday. My boss was very mad, and he believes that it was all me because that's what my husband told him. So the day that my phone got disconnected, my boss had told me that he would give me until Wednesday to get my phone set up on my own account. Well, it was Tuesday. I was supposed to still have one more day. Tuesday, I was going to get my phone set up anyways. So when I tried to use it 10:30 that morning, I said, well, gotta go straight to Verizon, and that's what I did. So once I got to Verizon, I talked with a salesperson. I told them, yeah, I need 2 phone lines, one for my husband, one for me. So they were doing that. They were running the numbers and all that stuff. So I realized I can connect to their Wi-Fi, and I can at least text my mother-in-law because it's Apple to Apple iMessage. So as soon as I connected to their Wi-Fi, I received a text message from my sister-in-law, and she said, we just heard the news. I'm so sorry. We're on our way. And I text back and I said, what news? What happened? And she texted me back saying, nobody told you? I said, no. And she said, he passed. So I found out in the middle of a Verizon store through a text message that my husband passed away. And I wound up dropping to my knees and just bawling my eyes out. And when the salesperson asked me if I was okay, I said, no, my husband just died. I have to go. So I jumped in the car and I ran to get my son from the daycare. And then I had to drive an hour home to where my husband was at his parents' house. By the time I got there, an ambulance was already in the driveway. So his mom was able to call my husband's boss, who was at the house already before me. She was able to call the ambulance already, who refused to remove his body because he was in hospice care. The funeral home had to come and get him. And she was on the phone with the funeral director, who refused to come and get my husband because they needed to speak to the next of kin, which was not her. It was me because I'm the wife. So she was able to call all these people, but she never called me. Now my boss, who knew exactly the address I was at, the number for the business I was at, he knew exactly how to get a hold of me. And he could have given that information to my mother-in-law to reach out to me, but neither one of them decided to do that for me. Nobody texted me or called me. And my boss disconnected my phone the morning that my husband died. So by the time I get to the house and I see all this going on, I was angry, but I ran straight to my husband. I remember giving my son to someone who took him to a different room. My daughter wasn't home yet. And I just sat with my husband crying. And I remember just saying, no, 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 no. Like just grabbing my husband, crying in disbelief. And it's like, no matter how many years I had to build myself up for this moment, because I knew it was coming, it was still no way to prepare myself for it. It just wasn't. The funeral director gets there to remove his body, and that's the only time I left my husband. I didn't want him to be alone. So I asked his brother to stay with him because I couldn't see the body bag coming out. I didn't want to see that part. I had already seen enough with the stuff around, the red stuff around his face from the paramedics trying to resuscitate him, with his do not resuscitate paperwork laying next to him that his parents ignored. So once he was removed from the house, his mom had to give me the phone to speak to the funeral director. Now, before my husband passed away, a few months beforehand, we had gotten his will done and everything. And he had put everything that was of his belonging to me in this will. And which he had a house before we had met. So originally I wanted him to give that house to his parents, but he said, no, I want everything to go to you. And this is when he was coherent. So he made up a will that if anything had happened to me, then his parents would get something. But at that time, while I was still alive, everything was coming to me. And obviously I was the next of kin, so I had to do the funeral arrangements. He did not want a funeral. He did not want a celebration of life. I convinced him to do a celebration of life because I knew his mom would want to do that for him. So 1, I tried to get him to put the house in her name. And 2, I convinced him to have a celebration of life for his mom. Keep that in mind. So I'm on the phone with the funeral director, and she's like, do you want to have a funeral? I said, he doesn't want to have a funeral. He wants to have he said he would do a celebration of life. His mom heard me along with his grandma, and then his mom started screaming at me, saying, you're the one who doesn't want a funeral. You don't want it. It's all you. Both of them are screaming at me while I'm still crying, while I'm on the phone, like his body was just removed from the house. So now I have them screaming at me while I'm on the phone. The funeral director is like, I'm so sorry. Like, what is happening? It was chaos. I'm screaming back at them. They're screaming at me. I'm crying. I'm trying to get out of the house. I call my dad. I leave him a voicemail. He passed away. I need you. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law take my kids. Oh, that was another thing. My daughter. That'll be in the next part. So in the midst of all the chaos and everything going on, I'm being screamed at. We're yelling back and forth. They're taking their anger out on me. I'm on the phone with the funeral director. I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do for a celebration of life. I get off the phone with her. I call my dad, leave him a voicemail crying, saying I need you. And then I have to text my job and tell them what happened because, again, I took over my husband's job, so they knew him and his situation. So I had to reach out to them and tell them, again, I did not have a cell phone service. I had to use other people's phones to make these phone calls. So I was having to find other means to connect with everybody to let them know that this just happened. And then eventually when I went on to Facebook later that night, his mom had the audacity to post that he had passed away on Facebook before I was even notified. She posted it on Facebook before I was notified. Yeah, I was ready to burn that house down. If his body was gone, I would have burned that house down. I would have been smiling in the mugshot because that house would have been in ashes on the ground if he was removed from it without me being able to say goodbye one last time to him. I had a lot of anger about that. So my daughter winds up coming home from school. And at this point, I'm trying to act like everything's normal. And she has an eye doctor appointment. I took her to the eye doctor appointment. And it was so difficult for me to keep everything inside. My daughter and her dad were like this, peanut butter and jelly. That was her favorite person in the world. As far as how we explained how things were going for my kids when my husband was sick, we tried to do it in a very gentle way. So when he passed away, I didn't know what to say. I don't even remember telling my kids that their dad passed away. All I remember is taking my daughter to the eye doctor appointment, acting like everything's normal. And then my brother-in-law and sister-in-law met up with me, and they said, let's take the kids for the weekend. That way, or for the next few days, because this was on a Tuesday. So they were going to take them for a few days. That way you can have some time to grieve. And so they did. I didn't have it in me to tell my kids. Even though he abused our son, my son still thought highly of his dad. And my daughter, she was never abused. She was just put in a circumstance where they try to make her his caregiver, but they didn't treat my daughter the way that they treated my son. They treated my son differently between his dad and his mom and then my husband, they treated my son differently, with the marks always showing up on him and not paying attention to him and treating my daughter like a princess. So my brother-in-law and sister-in-law took my kids and they explained it to them what happened while I stayed at home by myself. Not knowing what to do. I obviously had to get a phone, so I ran to Target, and I remember getting a line. I think I got like a Cricket line or something that I needed quick to be able to reach out to people. And that was another hard thing that I had to do, where it was like my husband just died. And now I'm like running to the stores to try to get a phone because my boss disconnected my phone while my husband was terminally ill. I have so much hatred for those people. And the fact that my husband had one pill left because his friend came and stole them so he could sell them, and left my dying husband with one pill for pain. I have so much hatred for those people, even years later. Now when I was able to get a hold of work and let them know that he had passed away, they told me to take the rest of the week off. I begged them to let me come in because work was like an escape for me during this whole thing, but they were like, no. And another thing that I just remembered was during the time that my husband was first originally diagnosed, he was treating me like crap at work, and one of my friends at the job, she stuck up for me and she was like, don't speak to your wife like that, like that's so rude. And he wound up, like, it was so much worse for me after we left work because she was sticking up for me, and he was screaming and yelling at me so bad we had to stop and get gas. And I remember we were at Costco gas, and the gas station attendant was overhearing my husband calling me names while I was in the passenger seat crying. My husband was outside the truck, like, still going off on me, and the gas station attendant saw me and started walking up to the truck, and I was like, I had to shake my head no, because like I was getting all this backlash from him because someone had already stuck up for me. I didn't want someone else to do it again and make it even worse for me because we still had a 40-minute drive home at this point. So it was a lot of emotions when he passed away because of all of the abuse that I endured, all the craziness I endured from the neighbor, trying to protect my children from the abuse my son was given physically, and then my husband telling me we're gonna get a divorce and stuff, and me having to take pictures of my son with like the bruises on his face, the bruises on his backside with the date stamps on it, so when he did go through with the divorce, I can show that to the judge and be like, these are marks that my husband admitted that he put on our son so that I could get custody. So when he passed away, it was like, on one hand, one, he's not in pain anymore. Two, I don't have to deal with his crazy antics anymore. Like, I'm safe now. I don't have to worry about that. My children are safe. I am safe. So it was bitter. I wouldn't say bittersweet. It was a double-edged sword, I would say. So now with his family that I'm left with, I was doing everything with his mom in mind, even though she had just screamed and yelled at me and his dad's been calling me names and stuff like that. I had been still thinking about them and their well-being. So when I was trying to do the funeral, I invited them to come with me along with his brother to help pick out his stuff, to help set up how we were going to do it. We got his ashes, or he was cremated, so I had his ashes put into a necklace for his mom, and I brought it for her to her job with a flower, an orchid. And the way she treated me, she didn't say thank you or anything. She just took it from me and that was it. So there were so many times, and I even apologized at one point. I didn't have anything to apologize. I never did anything wrong, but I still apologized to her because I just wanted to start fresh now. She lost her son. And it was like nothing was working with us anymore. It was like they didn't want me part of their lives anymore. I went from years of them calling me their mija, I'm their daughter, to now I'm nothing to these people. I'm sorry, this is so hard to relive. I've blocked this out for so many years. So his funeral time came. My other best friend came up. Since my other best friend just came up to see me, she couldn't get time off again. So my other best friend came to be a part of the funeral with me, along with my family, my dad and my aunt and stuff. Everybody came from out of state. We had a beautiful celebration of life. My brothers came, my cousin, and I remember being so distraught I couldn't go up and speak about my husband. And I begged my mother-in-law to go up there with her. I was like, can you please go up there with me? Because I don't think I could do this on my own. And she was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. And so I was like, okay. So then in the next part, I'll tell you what she did at his funeral.
See me with good posture in the next few days. Don't be surprised because I'll be stepping in this posture trainer.
This is part 7. About my husband's cancer battle. Now we're at his funeral and I'm asking his mom to go up with me to speak about him, but I'm too distraught to even stand in front of the room of people to get anything out. So I was scared and I was like, I don't want to go up there by myself. I just need some support. Will you go up there with me? And she was like, no, I can't do it either. Like, I can't do that either. So everyone is going up and speaking about him. His best friends came in from out of town to speak about him, and some of our other friends in the area spoke about him. And I had asked his mom again, and she was like, no. So then she winds up going up there without me and speaking about him. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Then she goes and is thanking everyone who helped take care of my husband for the past few years. She's thanking his boss. She's thanking his friend who was stealing the medicine. She's thanking everybody but me. I took care of her son for 3 years. I never complained about it. I did everything I could. I saved his life several times during this. I tried to keep him out of trouble when he was losing his mind with the neighbor. I did everything I could. I took over his job to make sure we still had income coming in. I took care of our babies. And she had the audacity to stand up there at his funeral and tell everyone thank you, except for me. That was so hurtful. So after the funeral, usually everyone goes back to the wife's house and they do whatever. I don't know. Well, his mother decided everyone was going to go back to her house, and she didn't want anyone to come to my house. So I go to my house, and my friends and family came to my house, where his family went to her house. So it was clear that there was a separation between us, that they wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Now that their son was gone, they wanted nothing to do with me. So I understood. But from that moment, they were having the kids every single weekend. They would take the kids from Friday night to Sunday afternoon. So I would spend the weekend grieving and cleaning. I was drinking a lot. I was barely surviving at this point because, again, even though like you're working yourself up to the day that he passes away because you had time to know, it's still, there's no way to prepare for it. So she was taking the kids every single weekend. I refused to sleep in our bed. I was sleeping on the couch for the first month. And that was the hardest time of my life. I thought the last 2 years were hard, 3 years. It was the first 30 days after he passed was the hardest for me. I didn't want to be here anymore. It got to the point where I was so isolated, even more so now than I was when he was alive, that I wound up going back to the cancer center and I had to get a hug from Stacy, and my husband's oncologist nurse. And as soon as they saw me, they ran and gave me a hug and gave me their condolences, and they were like, "We're so sorry to hear that his parents treated you that way." And I guess the doctor had told the nurse what had happened with him getting taken out of my care. So they were just hugging me and telling me everything's going to be okay. You got this. And like after I left there, like I felt a weight of relief. Like all I needed was a hug and for someone to tell me it was going to be okay, because I felt like my life was over. Like there was nothing more for me. My husband's gone. I don't want to be here anymore. Even though with the way that he treated me during that time, he was still the love of my life. He was still the father of my children. So it was very difficult, and I'm so grateful for the nurse and Stacy to give me those words, because I really held them closely. And that really changed the trajectory of me, because I just got to a point where I had to pray and ask God to help me, because I knew if I stayed on the route that I was on, it wasn't going to end up well. And I was in a fork in the road, and I needed to go a different route to make it out. Now, after his funeral, it's been a few weeks, I'm having to pay $5,000 for his funeral. His parents put down $500 towards the funeral and left the rest to me. And I was like, fine, I'll figure it out. Whatever. So I get a phone call from his cousin, and she said, "I'm so happy to hear that his funeral is paid for. It's all taken care of." And I said, "What are you talking about? It still has, I think it was like 25 or 2,800 left on it." She was like, "No, his dad posted something on Facebook saying thank you so much to everybody who gave them money, because now his funeral is paid for." So I had to go on Facebook and post the receipt that showed that we still owe 25 to 2,800. It was one of those too, that we still owed that much for his funeral, and that his parents were lying again. So his parents took the money that people gave them for the funeral and pocketed it. So again, my kids were going every weekend with their grandparents from Friday night to Sunday evening. And a few months into this, he passed in August. So that's September, October, November, December, January, I get a phone call from one of my husband's relatives, and they're like, "Why won't you let his parents see the kids?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Well, they called us and they told us that they haven't seen the kids in months." Again, the kids were going with their grandparents from Friday night to Sunday evenings every single weekend, except for my birthday weekend, Thanksgiving, and Christmas weekend, because we went out of state. November, Thanksgiving, we went out of state and spread my husband's ashes at the place that he wanted to be spread at. His family didn't even do that. His family didn't even spread his ashes where he requested. I was the one to do it. So now I'm getting a phone call about how I'm not letting them see the kids. So that was when I knew, okay, even though I've apologized and I've done everything that I could to kind of mend this relationship, it's not working. I'm the bad guy. I will always be the bad guy, because I'm the one who didn't get cancer and die. It was their son. So once I heard that they were still lying about me, I decided, we're leaving. There's nothing here for me anymore. I have been spending these last few months trying to heal myself, trying to heal my children. My kids don't remember anything bad that was happening when my husband was fighting the cancer, and I wanted to keep it that way. So they don't know the bad stories about him and how he treated me and how he was abusive to my son. I only told my kids the good memories, and I would play them videos of my husband and all that stuff. We celebrate his birthday every single year to this day. We still have pictures hanging up in our house of him. Now, I decided we're moving to a different city, so I was still an hour away from work, so I decided to sell the house that we were in and move closer to work, but I was not telling his family. I didn't want any of the drama. So his mom, she was still coming in the morning. Again, she was seeing my kids every single day. And she had my kids every single weekend. So she was coming in the morning to get my daughter onto the bus for school. So one morning she notices moving boxes in the house. And so what my daughter said was that she sat on the edge of the bed, the grandma, and starts crying to her, telling her, tell me, are you moving? Are you moving? And my daughter didn't know. My kids had no idea we were moving because they're children. They just lost their dad. I'm not going to add any more stress to them. So she sat on her bed, begging her to tell her. And she starts crying and telling my daughter, tell me, tell me, tell me. And my daughter got upset and she starts crying. And she was like, I don't know what's happening, Mommy. I don't know what's going on. And so that's when I had to tell my daughter, yes, we're moving. But I still didn't tell my in-laws. And then once I found out that my in-laws were lying about me still, I decided to cut ties with them and I stopped reaching out to them. So if they wanted kids, they had to reach out to me and I would tell them, yeah, okay. But I stopped reaching out to them and I started to make my escape. I started to plan my escape. So I'll go over what happened after that in the next part.
Doesn't praying to God imply that despite being omniscient, he doesn't already know what you want? And then wouldn't that mean that since you still have to pray for it, he just doesn't care?
This is part 9, and this will be the final part to my story. So now I'm planning my escape. I want to move away. I don't want to deal with them anymore. Before my husband had passed away, his friends and family were promising him that they would take care of me and the kids, and not a single one of them showed up to check on me after he had passed. Not a single one. And that was really when I made that decision that I was going to leave. Plain and simple. End of story. So it was about a month or 2 after my husband had passed away that I decided to go collect our belongings that were at his parents' house. He had brought some stuff over. They had a moving truck and brought everything over from our house to his parents' house. So I wanted to go grab that stuff back from them. Now, I had mentioned earlier that they stole 3 cars and I had to go and get them back. I eventually got those cars back, but someone stole all the titles to those cars. Now, the DMV knew me because we had to go in and sign everything over into my name. I think it was 6 months before. So luckily the DMV remembered me and she was like, I got you. We'll make duplicates and we'll put out something in the system about if those titles come up that they're stolen. So I went back to collect my belongings and his parents had already started pretty much doling things out to other people. My daughter was supposed to get a pair of headphones that my husband had promised her when he had, before he had passed. He said, these are yours when I'm gone. And those were stolen. Pretty much I was only left with his wallet and his wedding ring. And his dad didn't want to give me back the Amazon Echo that my husband had brought with him. He said, this is mine now. And I wasn't going to fight with him over that. I was just like, whatever. And then I was looking for my husband's work laptop. I needed stuff for the business on there. And his dad was like, I don't have it. And then a few days later, I was harassing him again. And he finally went and got it out of his underwear drawer and gave it to me. I went into the basement and a bunch of boxes and stuff were down there. And his dad started pointing to things and saying, oh, he said that he was going to give this to so-and-so. And he said he was going to give this to so-and-so. And I stopped him and I looked at him and I said, this isn't a fucking yard sale. These are my dead husband's belongings and everything is going into my car back to my house where it belongs. That was insane to me. Before he was even dead, I remember one day I came home from work when he was bedridden at our house, and I pull up and his brother is walking out of our basement to his truck with an armful of tools, loading it into his truck. I went and I asked my husband about it and I was like, did you give him all this stuff? My husband said no. So he calls his brother and his brother's like, yeah, I took this stuff. I didn't think you would need it anymore. Who says that? You don't say that to a dying man. Clearly his family just wanted stuff. I don't know for what reason, to sell it, to collect it. I have no idea. So anyways, we're still missing stuff. He had watches and sunglasses and stuff that I never got back. Now, we did have a storage unit that was in his parents' backyard that we dropped off when we moved from the one house with a crazy neighbor to a new house. So I went to go check on the storage unit so I could start getting stuff and bringing it back to my house so I could start getting ready to move. We had a lock on the unit, and I had the key and his parents had the spare key. When I opened that door, 70% of my stuff was gone. I'm talking about my childhood belongings that has no sentimental value to anybody but me. All of it was gone. I confronted his parents. They denied ever going into that unit and doing anything with it. So I don't know who was in there, but they stole tools. They stole my childhood things. It was a lot of stuff that was gone. I'm talking about 70% of my items just gone. And the unit had been sitting there for probably a year before I finally went back to it because I was too busy taking care of my dying husband while people were going into my unit and stealing stuff. Like, this is the mentality of this family and why I want nothing to do with them anymore. Now, another thing, there's another story that my kids told me when they were going over and having sleepovers with their grandparents. My son had told me one night that he fell asleep on the couch in the living room and that his dad's ghost moved him into his bed. I said, your dad's ghost? He said, yeah, Grandpa told me that Daddy picked me up and took me to my room. And then that created a nightmare at bedtime for my son because he was terrified now of ghosts because this is what the grandfather had told him. Okay? So at this point, I'm doing everything by myself. I'm barely surviving. I'm praying to God. I'm drinking all the time. I'm losing my mind. I finally get on the right path. I prayed to God to send me someone to help me. And my son, unfortunately, this poor thing kept trying to be my wingman and getting me to meet other people. Every time he would see a dad out in the wild, he would walk up to them and introduce himself and introduce me to him. I mean, it was very sad. He wanted me to get remarried. I didn't. I wanted nothing to do with that after what I had just been through. I really didn't. Now, almost a year later, I did wind up meeting someone who had asked me out to lunch. And since my kids were gone on the weekends, I decided to go out to lunch with him because I was like, what do I have to lose? I'm just sitting at home drinking and crying. So we went out to lunch and we actually had a great conversation. And we became friends and we wound up starting hanging out all the time. Again, I didn't have the kids on the weekends, so we were hanging out on the weekends and going to the movies, doing dinner dates and stuff like that. So I was really enjoying his company. We became fast friends. Unfortunately, he didn't know my story, and that's the way I wanted it. I didn't want him to get to know me as the widow, as a mom with 2 kids. I wanted him to get to know me for me, and I was even at that point trying to learn who I was as a person after all of this. So we became friends, and within a few months, he starts telling me that he has feelings for me. He wants to date me. I kept saying no. And finally I sat him down and I told him this whole story that I posted on here. I explained to him everything that had happened. And I thought for sure that he would like run for the hills. And this man straight up told me, I will wait for you. And he did. So by the end of 2019, we officially started dating. And I told him I'm moving. So even if we don't work out, I'm moving anyways. So it'll be fine. He eventually met my kids and stuff. He met my kids while we were still friends, and my kids just instantly fell in love with him. They wanted him to come over all the time. He would come over and immediately go to the kids and like ask them how their day was and read bedtime stories, help with homework. I mean, this is right off the bat. He had no kids. He's never been a dad, and he had big shoes to fill, and he did it seamlessly. Like, we all absolutely fell in love with this man. And before anyone is like, oh, I can never get remarried if my husband died. Shut up. Don't say that if you haven't been through it. I was 30 years old. I had 2 kids. My son clearly wanted a father figure back in his life. Don't say that, okay? And people who are like, oh, I don't know how you live without your husband. No shit. I couldn't. I didn't want to live anymore, okay? Now, before my husband had passed away, we had talked about it. He had told me himself he wanted me to get remarried to a man who loved me and the kids as much as him. Okay, so I already had his blessing. Anyways, so we wound up selling the house in one day, and we pretty much just moved in the middle of the night we were gone. I didn't tell my in-laws anything. I just packed up everything and we were out of there. That was it. As soon as I moved, I blocked them. I didn't want to talk to them anymore. I didn't want to see them anymore after everything that they had put me through. Out of all the apologies I had given them and tried to mend our relationship, I didn't need to apologize for anything because I didn't do anything wrong. So they painted me as their villain. I was going to be their villain. So we pretty much left in the middle of the night, didn't look back. We are having to live in Airbnbs. We were homeless. It was the beginning of COVID. We didn't have a house for the first 2 months after selling the house. We had to go into bidding wars with all these houses. It was a difficult time, but we made it fun. It was actually a lot of fun being homeless during COVID because we wound up staying at this Airbnb that had it was a historical cabin on a farm with horses and a pond to fish in. We had the best time because while everyone else was freaking out trying to stay away from everybody, we had this whole farm to ourselves because it was an Airbnb that I had gotten before COVID had officially started. So we had the best time. It was the perfect place to be during COVID, honestly. Now, when we finally got a new house and we got moved, I noticed this white car sitting out in front of our house. I don't remember how long after it was, but there was this white car with blacked out tint, a white BMW SUV sitting out in front of my house when I came home. And where my house sits, it's awfully suspicious. So I was like, it's probably a PI trying to track me down. I didn't give a shit. I went into my house. And then sure enough, I think it was probably like a month or two after that I received a package to my house from the grandparents. So at this point, they have been reaching out to me. I had blocked them and I didn't realize it, but if you have somebody blocked, they can still leave voicemails on your phone. So I had voicemails from the grandparents crying on my phone, asking where did we go, and they want to see the grandkids. They had also found my boyfriend at the time, his Facebook page, and was reaching out to him. I had explained my whole story to him, so he knew not to speak to them. He wanted nothing to do with them either, so he didn't reach out to them. Now, we received this package, and it had gifts for my kids. I did give them the gifts. I just didn't say who it was from. When I told my kids why we're not seeing the grandparents, I used COVID as an excuse for the first few years. And then I finally told them the truth where they made me cry a lot, and I don't want them in my life anymore. If you guys want to go see them, then you can, but you're going to have to drive to their house. It's not going to be me driving you to them. So as my kids got older, they really realized on their own, they realized they did not want anything to do with their grandparents. And again, I didn't say anything bad about their grandparents. I just said, they made me cry a lot, and I want nothing to do with them. I do not want them in my life. So my kids made a decision on their own that, yeah, we're good. If they made you cry, then we don't want anything to do with them either. Now, the new boyfriend, everything is going great. We wind up getting engaged, and now we're trying to have a baby. So this was like in 2022. Me and my now boyfriend, fiance, we're trying to have a baby, and we wind up having a miscarriage, which the miscarriage itself sends me into like the deepest depression, grieving all over again. I felt like I lost somebody I loved all over again. I thought I was healed at this point, but when that happened, I was back at square one. So I was hemorrhaging. It was a horrible miscarriage. I passed out. He had to rush me to the hospital. The triage nurse is Nurse Madonna. As soon as I saw her, I knew it was her. And I really, really wanted to throat punch her. But at the same time, I wanted to just woo-saw and heal and move on from that. But the fact that I had to see this lady again at a different hospital, after she told my husband he had heartburn and he would just have to take antacid, and it turned out to be stage 4 cancer, after she made me feel stupid and say, well, honey, if we all Googled our symptoms, we'd all think we were dying. Yeah, so that was very difficult for me because that brought up a lot of emotions for me, obviously. But I promise I didn't hit her. I didn't say anything. I really wanted to say something to her, but I didn't. Now, I was grieving a lot through that year. 2022 was a very difficult time for me. We got through it. We decided to start planning our wedding at the same time because that was something for us to look forward to, because we both now just went through a miscarriage, me and my fiance. So we wound up getting married the next year. This is my ring from him. We've been together ever since, and he's an amazing husband. He's an amazing stepdad to the kids. His family accepts my kids as their family. His family has been amazing. They love my kids, and that's all that I can ask for. They treat them so much better than the other people. I still don't talk to that family. I still have them blocked on everything. They have tried to reach out to my daughter through Facebook and stuff, and I've asked my daughter, and she doesn't want anything to do with them any longer. They're still trying to find us, but now we've moved out of state. And it's okay to walk away from people, even if they're your family. It's okay to walk away to protect your peace. And that's what I did. And my life, after I moved away, good karma came my way. Great karma came my way, because I know what the type of person that I am. I got all that good karma back after I moved away. And it was so refreshing to start your life over and taking out the bad people, because there was no drama, nothing. Everything's been beautiful. We've been living a happy, healthy life, and I couldn't ask for more. I'm happy with the new life that I created for my family. We're finally leaving the state that held so many bad memories for me. And we're starting fresh again. And that's another reason why I wanted to share my story, because I want to finally close this book and move on. I don't want this story to be mine anymore. I want to officially heal from it and go on with the rest of my life being happy. I want to let this go. I have never said anything bad about these people online when everything was going down. I have always kept my mouth shut. And I feel like now it's time for everyone to hear my side of the story. And for anyone who's going through a hard time, you can get through it. Because if I was able to get through everything that I just said I went through in the course of 3 years, you can get through anything. Block out those other people, get rid of them, keep going forward to get through, and you got it. It's a hard fight, but it's one that will be worth your while once you get to the other side. And if you made it to this last part of my long story, thank you. I appreciate you listening and allowing me to trauma dump on you for a little bit.